and welcome to the football podcast that doesn't want to see your striker scoring a 30-yard screamer, but is far more interested in seeing them bundle one in off their thigh. It's the big man up top.
It's the big man up top. That's what we like on this podcast. Football goals that are just
bundled in.
They all count.
They all count. The goal is a goal. There's been a lot of good goals this weekend, Ed.
There hasn't there?
And it's made me quite uneasy. I'm mainly referencing John Duran's goal for Aston Villa.
Absolute screamer.
We don't want strikers to be doing that, do we?
Well, I think, we do, but it doesn't fit with the vibe.
It doesn't fit with the vibe.
No, yeah. So what did you think to the weekend's action, Joe?
Well, it's been obviously quite a disappointing weekend as a Liverpool fan.
It has.
Yeah, it's been back down to earth.
Back down to earth
has been the phrase.
I want to just bring a couple of quotes that I've taken from some sports media over the weekend. One quote was embarrassing.
Sure.
One quote was the honeymoon period is over.
That's all a bit dramatic.
It's quite
one
dramatic.
Loss.
Yeah, one loss. What are your thoughts about Liverpool?
I think Forest played well.
They did.
I think it was one of those where Forest had a clear tactical game plan and Liverpool didn't know how to cope with that. That they packed out the midfield. They didn't really play with wingers until they brought on Hudson-Odoi. And they just played it tactically very well. Yeah, and also, I just think it's interesting to look at that phrase, the honeymoon period is over. Sure.
Things were pretty good to begin with.
Look, it's been plain sailing.
It's been plain sailing. Well, we'll see how Liverpool get on. Touching on great goals, as you mentioned, that goal from Duran at Villa. Everton throwing away a 2-0 lead again.
They went 2-0 up. Did any of us think they were going to win that game?
Well,
being 2-0 up. I don't know if we did.
It's starting to become a bit of a theme, and I feel like listeners will start to get the sense that we are willing Everton to do poorly, which we're absolutely not.
It's not the case.
It's a real shame.
It's not the case. It is a shame, but it's a little bit funny as well. They're thrown away 2-0.
Well, you're certainly revelling in it.
Yeah.
What do we think the issues are? Because when I watched the game, I felt like Everton struggled to contain Villa down Villa's left-hand side. But once you're 2 goals ahead, you can't be losing. Is that a sign that maybe they're mentally
weak?
I
think it's a mental thing, surely. And it's not something you expect of a Sean Dyche team,
Absolutely
is it?
not.
I feel like after throwing away a 2-0 lead, Sean Dyche will have gone into them last week and said, this doesn't happen again.
Yeah. And so for it to happen all over again is
just one of those.
Remarkable. What about Man United? They got a great win away at Southampton.
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
You're struggling to... I've written on my notes here, Man United looked good away at Southampton, and Joe took issue with that.
No, they did look good. They looked better.
Yes.
Let's settle that.
Okay.
Southampton looked great for half an hour. They've got this new right winger, Tyler Dibbling, who's come through the academy, looked very good, made Diogo Dalot look like a... championship defender.
Wow, goodness me. Big burn on championship teams there. But, what I love about Man United versus Southampton is that it just throws up the memory of the games in the 90s where they had all the kit problems.
Tell me about that. I wasn't here in the 90s.
Oh, well, there was a whole thing. United had an awful away kit that was grey. It was just terrible, really, really poor. And they'd lost a few away games and they went down 3-0, I want to say, very early on in that game. And Ferguson had them change out of their grey away kit at half-time and into a blue and white striped one from the previous year. They still lost.
Drastic measure. You've got to try things.
Exactly, but United never wore that grey kit again.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it was quite amusing. So.
Also this weekend, the North London derby.
Massive.
Big game.
Yeah,
you know
huge.
what I'm hearing about Arsenal? And you'll like this.
Will I?
A lot of people are likening them to Tony Pulis Stoke.
Yeah, well...
What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't think anybody who is likening them to Tony Pulis Stoke really actually went to see Tony Pulis Stoke.
Well, it's a thing of they played 4 centre-backs yesterday. Timber on the left is more of a full-back but can play centre-back.
Yeah.
They score a lot from set pieces. your old friend, the set-piece coach, was back in the technical area yesterday.
Was he? Oh, very good. I missed that.
He was the first to hug Arteta after the goal.
Yeah, well done.
Scraped through a 1-0 win.
Yeah.
An ugly win.
An ugly win. I just don't think that an Arsenal ugly win is anywhere near as ugly as a Tony Pulis Stoke one.
Well, a win is a win is a win.
Is a win, absolutely.
They say. And looking in the Championship, did you see the highlights of QPR against Sheffield Wednesday?
I did, yes.
Now, this was 0-0.
Yeah.
Up until the 93rd minute. Barry Bannon, you remember him?
I do remember him.
Scores an absolute worldie.
Yeah, well, was it? It was a good goal.
I'd say, well, maybe not worldie, a good goal. A very good goal.
Yeah.
In comparison to the goal that came next. 90 plus 6. Alfie Lloyd of QPR scores one of the most Sunday League goals you will ever see.
It was very, very, very Sunday League, wasn't it?
It was a rugby scrum.
It was the dictionary definition of a goal-mouth scramble, and the thing that I particularly loved about it is I was watching it, and I feel like every half second there could have been a handball shout, but it was just the ball was bobbling around and it just ended up in the net. You're so annoyed if that goes in against you at that late on.
But it's a thing of beauty.
But it's a thing of beauty. Very much so, yeah.
Speaking of the North London derby yesterday, Ed, I don't know if you've seen this video going around, but there's been a new development in the TV graphic sphere this season.
Tell me about that.
Now, I think this is a Premier League thing. This isn't on any of your broadcasters. This is like, your world feed. Premier League have their own graphics. And after Arsenal scored yesterday, there's a little animation in the top left corner. It showed the bird from the Tottenham badge kind of swanning along, and then the cannon from the Arsenal badge shooting down the Tottenham bird to release a puff of smoke that read, "North London is red," after one goal.
It feels a little over the top, don't you think?
It's a bit much.
And also, as well, just this idea of a big cannon destroying a bird, that doesn't feel very 2024, does it?
It's not.
Are the RSPCA going to get involved?
Well, I think they should, and they have a right to do that. And I think, for me, this is a wider issue.
Okay. I think
you see this with social media accounts from clubs getting involved with things, getting involved with jokes that we have. So, there's been a trend the last couple of weeks of Barclaysmen. Yeah. People have got a bit bored in the international break, and they've started to speak about your Barclaysmen. These are like your Blackburn players, your Bolton players of the mid-noughties. Everyone's having a bit of fun, like it's a trend, posting videos. Then as soon as clubs get involved to do this, it's a bit like, oh.
They ruin the joke. It's like when your parents start using slang as a teenager. It just ruins it.
Or they start listening to songs that you like. Yeah. That's what I feel like this is. The Premier League are saying North London is red. That's not on them to say.
It's not on them to say that at all. No, yeah. And I did see some of these animations before the season, and I didn't look at them that closely, but the thing that struck me was that some of them, when you've got obvious teams with obvious nicknames that works, then that sort of makes sense. You got the cannon of Arsenal and the little red devil for United or whatever. But then some of them just said goal, and like it didn't really do anything. Yeah. You clearly thought they go, Bournemouth, what are we going to do?
It feels
cherries?
Like they've had a cannon shooting down some cherries.
Yeah, exactly.
Scoring its bomb.
It doesn't have the same effect, does it?
It feels a bit like they've had a great idea for some teams and then thought, we're going to have to do this for every team.
Yeah, this is not going to work.
What have we got for Ipswich?
Exactly. Tractors. Okay, Joe, it's that time in the podcast where we test our footballing knowledge in the trivia section. The terribly named Bible Ballers. Please do send in other thoughts, because I'm not having that as a final one, But this is Guess the Player with a Difference. So I will give Joe a bit of a trivia question. It will be a Guess the Player, but the difference is the first name of this player will also be the same as the name of a book in the Bible. So how are you feeling, Joe? You're currently 2-1 up in this game.
I am, and that's a dubious one for you.
Not dubious at all.
I would say it's still dubious. But yeah, feeling good, feeling confident.
Good.
It's been a good start to the season.
It has. Are you ready for this one?
Let's do it.
Okay. Which former Premier League striker won the Premier League with Manchester United twice, had stints at Barcelona and Bayern Munich, and has managed his country along with 7 different club teams in England? So I'll say that again. Which former Premier League striker won the Premier League with Manchester United twice, had stints at Barcelona and Bayern Munich, and has managed his country along with 7 different club teams in England? You got any thoughts?
Interesting. Well, my former Premier League striker, my mind went to Dion Dublin.
Okay.
I don't think it's him.
I didn't say currently presenting
Homes Under the Hammer.
Homes Under the Hammer.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this one. Struggling with this one. Barcelona and United, Henrik Larsson, but there isn't a book of Henrik
in the Bible. No, there isn't. Bible. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the rest of the episode to have a think about it, and we'll come back at the end. Okay, I've got a question for you, Joe. You're a Liverpool fan, so why? why did you start supporting Liverpool?
It's a great question, Ed, and it's a difficult one to answer, particularly this weekend. Why do I support this team?
Exactly.
But yeah, my family, they originate in Liverpool. I had grandparents that lived there. I have a great-grandma that still lives there. And my dad took me as a child. I remember my first game was 2005, Liverpool against Bolton, a 1-0 win, Igor Biscan with a header.
Igor Biscan, there's a name.
And I just remember him taking me to that game, my first Anfield experience, and just absolutely loving it. I grew up near Crewe Alexandra, had a season ticket there, so I'd go along, but just didn't compare to what I experienced at Anfield. And yeah, ever since then.
So I'm a Stoke fan. I was born and raised in Stoke. My family mostly live in Stoke. But interestingly, when I was getting into football as a child, I loved Man United. They were the team I was interested in. It was that 90s team, your Giggs, your Cantonars, your Keanes, your Beckhams, etc. When I was sort of 7, 8, 9, those were the players who were, peak United at their pomp. And that's what made me love football. But then my uncle, I think, probably panicked and
didn't want this for his nephew.
Yeah, exactly. He started taking me to Stoke away games. So all of a sudden,
that'll do it.
All of a sudden, I'm in the away end at Bury, Macclesfield. I even remember a 1-0 defeat away at QPR after a 6-hour coach journey, and I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. Like, I just got way more emotionally attached to Stoke, and there was a moment where I was like, oh, okay, well, this is my team now.
This is it.
So I thought we could have a really interesting discussion about who we support, why we support them, not just us, though. I decided to check in with some folks here at the office, here at UCB Towers, to find out why they support their respective teams.
Hey, it's Dave Tanner here, UCB1 presenter, midnight to 5 Mondays and Tuesdays. I support Notts County. Come on, you pies! Because they are geographically the closest football club to where I live. They're also much cheaper to go and watch than Nottingham Forest.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a presenter on UCB1 and I support Man City because I am Manchester born and bred. It goes back generations in my family supporting City. And also the whole team just make me so proud. Whenever I see any of them, I get a little bit emotional. That's why I support Man City. They're the best. Why wouldn't you?
Hi, I'm James Etz. I'm part of the Kingdom Academy and I support Man United because it was a team I just grew up watching, started from match in the day. And because they were a lot better then, I'd see them more and then I'd just research them, getting to know them, went to a game, looked them up and just have been continuing ever since. We're on a bit of a bad streak right now, but hopefully we'll be back.
Hi, I'm Joel Brown for UCB1 and I support Chelsea because my dad supports Chelsea and he just kind of led me into that and I've been a Blue ever since.
My name's Lizzie. I am on the marketing team. I support Arsenal because not only are the greatest team in the world, I also watched Thierry Henry play as a kid and fell in love with Arsenal.
It's good, isn't it?
Very
Crucially,
good.
Fell in love
with Arsenal.
With Arsenal.
I think we've all fallen in love with Thierry Henry over the years. I'm really interested by that comment that Sarah made about getting emotional when she sees any City player. Like, how deep does that go?
Yeah.
Does Nathan Ake make her emotional?
I don't know.
Scott Carson?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it'd be useful to test that.
Well, I'm really excited to invite a guest into the studio.
Our first real-life guest.
Real-life guest. We are delighted to have Morgan Nock with us today. How are you doing, Morgan?
Yeah, really good. Thank you, guys.
Good.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're very, very welcome.
Very welcome.
Now, the reason why we've decided to have Morgan here is because he's a huge football fan, obviously. kind of have to be even in our universe. But he's got a really interesting story about the team he supports and why that happened. So tell us a little bit about your football journey. Let's just sort of start from the beginning, I guess. When did you first get into football, and who was your team, etc.?
I think it's fair to say I got into football before I knew it. My dad supports Aston Villa. His story is that he likes the colours. So he's from the Black Country, so he should naturally be West Bromwell Wolves, and all of our ancestors were West Bromwell Wolves. But he liked the colours, chose Aston Villa. Happened at a really good time because when he was 14, they won the European Cup.
Yeah.
He passed that down to me. I kind of characterise my football supporting as like a love life. So Aston Villa were my first love.
We heard earlier some of the different UCB colleagues talking about why they support who they support, and completely by accident, I literally picked the first 5 people who I could get to record, and they all had different reasons why they were supporting their team. So, and we didn't hear, I liked the kit, but it's good a reason as any.
I think that's a very fair reason. It's one of the better kits.
It is.
Say.
Yeah, exactly. So who's next after Aston Villa?
As I kind of approached my teenage years, we didn't go to Villa very much. It was once or twice a season. And then a town close to where I live was Kidderminster. So they have a team. At the time, they're in the conference. Now they're in Conference North. But that was much more accessible. So I could get a season ticket for £25. And I kind of fell in love with them as a teenager, as you do. I was infatuated, I suppose. And as I kind of spread my wings and started to fly the nest, I went to all ends of the country. I particularly remember going to Dover on a Tuesday night. That was a good fun trip. We lost.
Wow.
That's a trip.
Goodness me. When you sort of see those fans and you're like, yeah, on a Tuesday night, I remember recently thinking about that when I was at Stoke, and I think it was Middlesbrough on a weeknight, and I thought, who are these people? Who are these people that got nothing better to do with their time? It's Morgan. That's exactly who it is.
It's just 100 Morgans.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There was less than 100 of us following Kidderminster, I can assure you. But yeah, as that ramped up, as I got a bit older, there was one season where I went to every single game and was travelling all around the country. And then a new person bought the club, and his approach wasn't quite the same as it had been previously. So a lot of the community programmes suffered, and the whole approach changed. The big quote from this guy was that I want it to be a business, and his idea was to move away from concentrating on the football and start a university of football in Kidderminster. We're here a few years later, and that's not quite come to fruition. During that period, he made himself the manager 3 times.
Oh gosh, and that's a move, isn't it?
Yeah. So is that something? So you said that he was moving away from that community thing. What kind of thing was he doing in the community that resonated with you?
Well, so they had loads of different programmes on. And if it was now, it would be like all the food banks and the warm spaces. All the community stuff just stopped. It was like the previous people running the club had that holistic approach and has seen the wider picture, that it's not just what happens on a Saturday afternoon. This is a community asset. And the focus became personal financial gain. It wasn't quite the same. Results on the pitch tanked, and they still haven't recovered. And I just kind of felt pushed out. It didn't feel like my club anymore.
Yeah. The sort of the story of an owner coming in and changing the club is obviously a big one. Many clubs have got that whole experience. The obvious one being everything that happened to Wimbledon back in the day and all that sort of stuff. But I'm really surprised that it had that much of an impact on you, that you didn't just think, like, I'm going to stick around and try and campaign to get this guy out or whatever it was, but you felt pushed out to that extent. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I think everything just seemed to change so quickly. This guy comes in, makes himself the manager, gets rid of all these players, and yeah, as I say, results did tank on the pitch. And yeah, it was just a total sea change. And for me personally, it was a time in my life where a lot was changing. So I'd come out of university looking for work and was open to move anywhere. And so, it sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but I didn't want to be the person standing there protesting. I had that opportunity to move away.
You talked about it being like a love life and a bit like a relationship going sour. You'd felt slighted by what had happened at Kidderminster. Where does it go there?
So it was New Year's, over the Christmas New Year period, 2016-17, and I was on holiday with my friends. We went and rented this big house in the middle of nowhere in Scotland, and while we were there, Inverness were playing Livingston. I said, well, right, I'm getting on eBay. Whichever the cheapest scarf is, Livingston or Inverness, I'm picking that, and we're going to go sit with their fans and have a great time. As it happened, I found a Livingston scarf, and we went and sat in the away end. There was about 15 Livingston supporters. This was Scottish Championship, so it's not the nowhere leagues, but it is a really, really long way to Inverness.
It's quite a long way to Livingston.
Well, yeah. So Livingston got a late equaliser, drew 1-1. Alan Lithgow scored. He was part of a team that went from League One at that point all the way to the Premier League. It was perfectly timed. So I met loads of great people, and they said, well, why don't you come back next week? And as they say, the rest is history.
Oh, gosh.
So you started this long-distance relationship.
I pitched up to watch a random game and suddenly fell in love with Livingston. And the rest of my life is in their hands.
What was it about Livingston that you connected with? Because geographically, that's not ideal, right?
No, so it's a 500-mile round trip from my house.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, you don't drive, Morgan. So how are you getting there? Tell us about the journey to go and watch Livingston.
So, well, during the train strikes over the last couple of years, it's been really problematic. I was catching a bus from my house to the nearest town at 11:30 at night, then getting a coach from there to Manchester, then a coach from Manchester to Glasgow. I'd get into Glasgow about 6 o'clock Saturday morning, and then I went over to Livingston, and then the same on the way back. So there's a coach that leaves Glasgow at 10:30 to come back to Manchester. So I'm getting to Manchester at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then eventually back to my house at 8:30 on Sunday morning. So I'm leaving at 11:30 on Friday night to get back 8:30 on Sunday morning. In 2 consecutive weeks I did that. We lost 4-1 to Hibs and 3-0 to Inverness.
Oh, goodness me.
I was going to say, is it worth it?
It's always worth it. It's all about the people, and I think that's what going to football matches is about generally. All those people that I started talking to in Inverness welcomed me into their community, and I really felt like a part of it immediately. There were just people came out the woodwork. Oh, I'm from Livingston. I go occasionally. I live in Chester. I live in Manchester. I live in Stratford. And wanted to be my friend. And then it was the same in Scotland. People go and they hear or they follow me on Twitter, or they just see me around, and you just get talking to people, just like at any football match. But I guess I've got that added quirk that I'm that weirdo from England that does that 500-mile round trip.
I wasn't going to say weirdo, but I mean, you sort of hit the nail on the head there, I suppose. So tell us a bit about, because you've been quite obsessed with the history of Livingston as well. Tell us a little bit about your fascination with the history.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Wimbledon a few minutes ago, and there is a kind of link. So Livingston are kind of like the MK Dons of Scotland. But I didn't know this when I was going in. But it's really interesting. So
you stuck with them now. You can't move on.
Well, yeah, quite. So it goes back to the 1940s. So there's a company called Ferranti that made electronic parts for aircraft, and they had a work team that started playing in the Edinburgh Work League. And by some massive series of events, a place became available in the Scottish Football League. The local council gave them Meadowbank Stadium to play in, so they changed the name to Meadowbank Thistle. They played there for 20 years, enjoyed some success. And then another one of these big bad owners came in and said, well, I want to move this team to Livingston. And it didn't go down well, but basically the guy got away with it, moved the team to Livingston.
So that's interesting, because I always think of MK Dons as being the first time we tried that in British football, but it wasn't. It happened.
Yeah, I think it's I'm surprised that it's not more well known. And as I've discovered this, wanted to go and learn everything I possibly could about it, because like you say, I am obsessed with Livingston, but actually that goes back beyond my lifetime. So this is an exclusive. Last week I bought the domain meadowbankthistle.co.uk.
Wow.
So I've got a really clever spreadsheet that has all the people who've ever played every game for Meadowbank Thistle, virtually. I'm nearly there. I've got a big drawer full at home of programmes from the 70s, 80s, 90s. I'm 4 short on the entire Meadowbank Thistle collection.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So I mean, I don't do things by half measures.
You don't, do you?
You're committed.
Well, I mean, good luck on your journey to sort of uncover the history of this team. It sounds absolutely fantastic. You're quite new to faith. You were baptised earlier this year, weren't you? How has your faith changed how you support your team?
As time has progressed, I go less often. I probably go about once every 6 weeks now. And I'd like to go more, but it just doesn't fit in with family life, whereas going to church does.
When I was at school, the kids in the playground would throw around the word glory hunter a lot. Joe, do you remember hearing that? At
Yeah, I mean, I always got it as well.
Of course you did, yeah.
Obviously, the year that I properly got into Liverpool was 2005, when the famous Champions League final in Istanbul.
Yeah.
If you don't support a team from where you're from, there's almost this kind of judgment of why, like, prove to me why you deserve to support this club.
You were derided for supporting a team that wasn't your local team. Now, I support Stoke, so if you're from the Stoke area, you're supposed to support either Stoke or Port Vale, and they're the only two acceptable. But actually, I was very close to Eccleshall Town FC. They were the closest geographically. I had absolutely no interest in supporting them. And yeah, it was fine for me to pick Stoke. So I think it is interesting. I think there's a lot of double standards. But for me, it's all about it's about what is the connection, what's the emotional connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And Morgan, you touched on when you were going along to Kidderminster, so you felt part of that club. And I think that's a sign of connection, right? That you feel part of this club, something changes in that club, and it almost hurt you, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. I played for the supporters team probably more than 50 times. It was a huge part of my life. Yeah, like you say, that there was that change, and suddenly I didn't love them anymore.
Yeah.
Or certainly not in the same way.
Because actually this sort of reminds me of church in a sense that we can go to church regularly, but then there's a moment where we become part of the furniture, where we don't just go to the church and get entertained once a week or whatever it is, but we take ownership of the place. We are going around and, if there's any litter outside the entrance, you're picking it up, or if something needs doing, you just do it because all of a sudden it's not some place you go to just receive, but it's something that you are part of. It's a community that you're part of.
And it's also a place that resonates with your values, and clearly justice is quite a big part of your values when it comes to football clubs. You cared about what the owners do, you care about the history of Livingston, and I think if you feel connected to that place, then you're entitled to support that team, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
For me, it's about having a safe place and somewhere that you feel welcome, and that's what I feel at both the home of the Set Fair Arena and at All Saints Church.
That's lovely. That's really lovely. And listen, Morgan, it's been great to chat to you. Will you stick around for the rest of the podcast?
I'd love to.
Great. We are coming back to our trivia, Joe.
Yes.
So the question is, which former Premier League striker won the Premier League with Manchester United twice, had stints at Barcelona and Bayern Munich, and has managed his country along with 7 different club teams in England? How are you getting on with it?
Now, I do think I have the answer.
Oh.
I've had quite a lot of time to think about.
You have. You were stumped, weren't you?
I was stumped initially. What made me think was it 7 clubs in England that
7
he's managed?
clubs, yeah.
So I had to think about who are the real journeyman managers.
Okay.
As discussed last week, you've got your Sam Allardyce, you've got your Neil Warnock.
Yeah.
But I've landed on Mark Hughes.
Mark Hughes. Morgan, what are your thoughts? What would you have gone for?
I mean, I worked out a lot faster.
Yeah, of course you
give
did.
you the same answer. The next challenge is to name the 7 clubs that he's managed.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So you went for Mark Hughes as well?
Yes.
Is correct.
Fantastic.
Well done, Joe. So very good. Can you name the 7 clubs that he managed?
Well, let's go round. I'll start with Stoke City.
He did manage Stoke.
Manchester City.
He did manage Man City. I've got the list here, so it's
Wow.
Who else?
Bradford City.
He did manage Bradford. Yeah, well done. Who
Queen's
else?
Park Rangers.
Queen's Park Rangers, correct.
Can I say Wales?
Sure. Yeah.
That's a cop out.
Morgan knows this.
Go
Come
on,
on.
Morgan.
Blackburn
Finish
Rovers.
it off.
Blackburn Rovers, correct.
Definitely Southampton. Now I'm struggling.
Is there one more?
The other one was Fulham.
Oh.
He was Fulham manager.
Yeah.
An incredible career. Started at Man United, went to Barcelona. They loaned him to Bayern Munich. He went back to United, where he scored 83 goals in 256 games. And by the way, just remind yourself, he scored some absolute worldies. He did not score a goal that was less than 30 yards.
King of the volleys, wasn't he?
King of the volleys, yeah, absolute blinders. So, yeah, incredible career. Mark Hughes. Well done.
There we go. Is that 3-1?
That's 3-1, Joe. We've got a bit of correspondence, Joe.
Some more
Correspondence.
Gosh.
So you may remember that on the last episode, we were slightly disparaging to Blackpool as a town. I don't think we meant to be, but it definitely came across, didn't it?
This was the conversation about Steve Bruce.
We sort of simply asked, why would Steve Bruce want to go to Blackpool?
Why would he do this?
And UCB2 presenter Samuel Ball is a huge fan of Blackpool, and it just so happened that he was there this weekend.
Of course he was.
And he was not happy to hear our chat, and he sent us a note back to us.
Well, Ed and Joe, here we are in beautiful Blackpool. Yes, it's breezy, yes, it's cold. But I can see why Steve wanted to come here because, I mean, what's not to like? You've got the beautiful sea, not one, not two, but 3 piers. Of course, you've got the iconic Blackpool Tower, which is there. And then if we turn you round, just behind me here, we have Blackpool Pleasure Beach as well. So, yes, the sea's a little bit choppy this morning, but it is lovely here. Who wouldn't want to come here and be the manager? Who certainly wouldn't want to come here and enjoy the sights, sounds and smells of Blackpool? So, yeah, it makes complete sense. It is heaven on earth here in Blackpool, if a little bit cold, yes. It's freezing.
Samuel Ball there.
Wow. Well, the weather sounded lovely.
It did. The weather sounded absolutely horrendous. Also, he was talking about the smells of Blackpool. Do we think that maybe smelt like a comeback in the air?
He could smell it coming, couldn't he?
He could smell it coming, and we were trying to work out what the smell of a comeback was.
Maybe it's the same as the smell of Blackpool, who Steve Bruce won his first game at the weekend.
He did.
For Blackpool.
Yeah. So thank you, Samuel, for getting in touch.
Thank you, Samuel Ball. Well, that's all we have time for this week on The Big Man Up Top. If you want to get in touch with the show, please ping us an email to podcasts@ucb.co.uk. Please follow, subscribe, and give us some good reviews if you can, because this will help us get the word out in the early days. And if you've enjoyed this, please tell your mates. A huge thank you to Morgan for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you to our producer Anthony for all his hard work behind the scenes. And there'll be a new episode next Tuesday, Ed.
There will.
See you then.
See you later.